Hello, everyone. I believe we would be live by now. So, from all the part of the world, I'm from India, and I see a lot of my panelists from different part of Africa and Europe. So, thanks for joining in. Today, we will be discussing about a very pertinent topic, which is critical for Africa. We all know that food is hope, and Africa is one of the continent which needs food more than anyone else, because we can see that out of 270 million odd food insecure people, a substantial part of them happens to be in Africa. At the same time, we also know that Africa is a continent of hope as well as opportunity. There is not a single food commodity which cannot be grown in Africa, but still we have a lot of imports of food coming all the way to Africa. Today, we would be discussing about how we can leverage agriculture technology, whether it is digital, whether it is biotech, good agriculture practices, and those things related to that to make Africa food self-sufficient. I would like to start this session by taking introduction of all the panelists one by one so that we can understand, because we are having people from diverse backgrounds. We are having someone who is a part of a foundation supporting Africa. We are having someone who is building ecosystem, somebody who is having seed capital to bankroll the startups. At the same time, we are also having people who have put up technology on the field to ensure that input demands of Africa can be taken care of in a sustainable manner. I would like to start the first introduction with Ellie. Ellie, if you can just introduce yourself, the great work you are doing, and make us understand that how agri-tech can solve the Africa's chronic problem of food insecurity. Floor is yours, Ellie.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a nice introduction and for letting me speak on this very important and interesting session. So my name is Ellie Blei-Munklien, and I'm heading Innovation Norway's East Africa office, which is also the commercial section of the Norwegian Embassy. So our office is in Nairobi, but we also cover Uganda and Tanzania, and our mission is foremost to help Norwegian businesses succeed in East Africa. So we give market advice and insights, support on matters of business ethics or support on research, these type of things, also partner search, how to do due diligence. And we also take an active role in organizing business delegations, webinars, seminars, exhibitions. And with the COVID-19 situation, we can also be the boots on the ground, so to speak, being a physical representative of Norwegian companies in business meetings. But to succeed, you have to find a match between the need and interest in the market and competitive advantage and interest in to export from the Norwegian companies. So last year, we started to explore such a match, if such a match existed within agri-tech. So since then, we've been working very much on that topic. As presented already, agriculture in East Africa is high on the agenda for a very good reason. Agriculture accounts for more than 32% of the region's gross domestic product, employs about 80% of its labor force, accounts for about 65% of foreign exchange earnings, and contributes to more than 50% of raw materials to the industrial sector. So the sector has huge potential, and the need for taking advantage of the potential is profound. Jobs, food security, prosperity, export revenue, development. So I think this is the reason why we've taken such an active role in this area. So in November 2019, exactly 1 year ago, actually, as I mentioned, one of our services is to offer and to organize business delegation. And in November last year, we traveled around Kenya on a fact-finding mission together with a good group of Norwegian companies. And what we found was actually that the Norwegian companies and organizations taking part was a surprisingly good match between the Norwegian solutions and the need in the market. So why? It might sound strange, but Norway share many characteristics, challenges, and ambitions with the agri-sector in East Africa. Whether with large seasonal changes, extremely harsh at times, many smallholders living in remote areas is part of our culture and political will. Livestock grazing in areas without mobile connectivity, logistic and transport challenges. Oh my God, we have a lot of that, which of course then give delays, from farm to fork, and increases the post-harvest loss. Challenges with mildew, use of pesticide, fertilizer. So like in Africa, when you face a challenge, some give up and some step up and invent solutions. So we therefore have several agri-tech companies really interested in the East African market, and they're of course interested in customers, but also in partners to test and adjust their solutions to local needs, find partners and investors to build local subsidiaries, etc. So maybe later in the session, I can show you a few of the examples, which I think would be very nice to also have a look at. But I think I used a lot of time doing the introduction. So thank you, Deepak.
Perfect, Ali. Like it's always, I believe that being a practitioner in agriculture technology domain, that partnerships are very important, right? The partnership cross-continent, cross-border, right? Cross-functions, that's very, very critical, because to make Africa self-sufficient, you need multi-stakeholder approach. You cannot have just either the government or the public sector, the private sector or development agency themselves can be able to achieve the success. We need to all work together and achieve that. So very, I'll say that clearly articulated introduction. Thank you for that. I go to the next lady on the panel, and see, the beauty is that today we are having pretty balanced panel, and I love that actually, that you have people, because everybody has their own, I'll say that thought process. And when you have feminist approach, and the COVID has shown us feminist approach is better than the approach by the male in solving the big challenges and the problems. So Wadzi, it's you. I would like to understand from you the great work you are doing at my this MasterCard Foundation, and how you are adding value in making Africa more food secure.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be part of this auspicious event and talking about a really crucial and important topic, which is just around agriculture and food security. The MasterCard Foundation is a Pan-African grant-making organization. We're based headquartered in Toronto, but with a solid footprint in about 7 markets across Africa, so ranging from Ghana, Senegal, and Nigeria in West Africa, and Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Ethiopia in East Africa, with the intention of expanding further. And our big flagship program that we run is called Young Africa Works. We are intent on solving the big challenge, which is part of the demographic dividend that Africa has been blessed with, which is a humongous youth population. So young people under 25 exceeding 50% by 2030. And our intent is by 2030 to have been able to impact 30 million young men and women across the continent with meaningful and dignified work. And as you know, a large population of young people are involved in economic activity that is agriculturally focused, with a great percentage of them being smallholder farmers and tiny agribusinesses. In terms of kind of deploying digital technology, what we're seeing across the continent is the emergence of various digital products and platforms that aggregate young workers in the agricultural sector and are also solving for a lot of value chain and supply chain related issues. And so we're intent on focusing, I think, in the digital space around human capacity development for the agricultural sector, as well as investing in ways in which we can create meaningful and dignified work and increase revenue for young people who are involved in agriculture, and present agriculture as a viable career opportunity for young people who are involved in that sector. And I would say, just in terms of addressing this challenge, digital entrepreneurship and digital platforms are our two-pronged approach in terms of how we are navigating the ecosystem and ecosystem actors. Because we're a funder, we don't obviously directly do the work ourselves, but we are on the lookout for innovative, creative entities across the continent that have traction and have proven an ability at scale to be able to reach young people. And I think what's really interesting is a lot of our entrepreneurial partners that we're working with are largely in the e-commerce and retail space, but really working hard to not only educate young people, but to tackle a lot of the different pain points using technology that otherwise would not be possible with analog solutions, and doing this at massive scale. Some of our bigger partners have over 1 million young people who are aggregated on the platforms. And it's an exciting thing to see, I think, to be in existence in 2020 with all of the various forms of tech that are intersecting. We're able to reach young people at unprecedented scale, as well as with greater efficiency and a much lower cost than we've been able to do in a while. I don't want to take up too much time. There's so many people doing really interesting things. I'd love to hear from everybody else too.
Now, you have already done some very, very interesting thing. First of all, you are already working in 4 of the top 10 fastest growing economies of the world, right? And top 4 in Africa. So that's one. And secondly, working with the youth. I also believe that the biggest USP of Africa is the youth. And that is what you are tapping into. And also, I strongly believe that in agriculture, financial inclusion is very critical. Technology does play a very, very critical role, but it's boiled down to whether actually these young innovators, whether they have money to take their dreams forward and make them reality. Now, we would like to go to Ashwin. Ashwin, you have been doing phenomenal work in creating the right sort of ecosystem to ensure that these innovators and startups, they are actually groomed well to become global players. So we would like to understand from you the exciting work you are doing. Floor is yours, Ashwin.
Yeah, and I think thank you for having me here, Deepak and Banu, and obviously a very good morning from sunny Ghana to the rest of the panelists. I think it's good to see that I think all of us are connected already. Our founder is Norwegian. Meltwaters actually was formed by a Norwegian man, and he came in 2008 to Africa to start MESS. So MESS is a 3-part organization. We're one, a training program which focuses and only focuses on entrepreneurs. 2, we're a seed fund which supports the entrepreneurs. And 3 is we have a virtual network as well as a physical network of hubs across Africa, where our founders actually sit in these markets and we support them through our central portfolio line. So in short, MESS is an organization which specializes in finding, recruiting, training, supporting, and funding entrepreneurs. And that's what we've been doing for the last 12 years. Earlier this year, we had, I think, great conversations with MasterCard Foundation, and we're part of your family as well. So I think that the plan is to always sing together in collaboration. But our interest in Agritech started in 2016, as we were one of the first companies in Ghana to actually invest in Agritech solutions. Our founder and I think pretty much the entire team believes in the fact that digital solutions are a way of aggregating agricultural services rather than actually disrupting them. So we're looking at more at the agricultural value chain from an enable angle when it comes to, I think, digital solutions. Ghana also is one of those countries where the GDP depends so massively on agriculture that we actually have a lot of agricultural tech companies such as Complete Farmer, Trotter Tractor, Agro Center, Farmer Line, etc. And you can see that the competitive cohesiveness over here in the local market, especially when it comes to farmers and actually the produce they're creating, is super, super high. So what we've also been able to do is, I think, pretty much ride that innovation wave as well. We have over 10 investments in Agritech across Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya as of right now. And we're trying to see how the world is going to change through entrepreneurs and digital entrepreneurship in the Agritech value chain. Thank you, Deepak.
Perfect. Very well articulated. When in agriculture you start talking about disruption, you are at the wrong side. So you are right that it has to be transformative, not disruptive when it comes to agriculture. So thanks Ashwin for articulating what you are doing so well, and wish you all the best with your startup and the activities you are doing. We move forward to Ronald. So Ronald, thanks for being here, and we would love to hear a little bit more about the activities you are doing and how you are impacting Africa to make it more food secure. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Deepak, and very good afternoon to all the other panelists and everybody who's joined this session. My name is Ronald Osumba. I'm the CEO of AIW Africa. AIW Africa is a boutique innovation house. We basically focus on leveraging technology for public good. So working with the ecosystem, mostly problem solvers, identifying who they are, building their capacity, connecting them to opportunities, mostly with government, because leveraging on technology for public social good requires you to work with policymakers, with government officials who are, providing leadership in the areas of agriculture, healthcare, education, public transport. We work with funders and development agencies to provide financing for some of these entrepreneurs. Currently managing UK Aid Fund, it's £5 million to support innovators who are specifically creating jobs. So catalyzing jobs through investments from private sector, from development agencies. We also have a lab where we build products, currently focused on agriculture and urban mobility. On the agriculture front, our interest is to ensure that we are addressing market system gaps. So I think like Eli had mentioned before, and I think Wadzi has also mentioned, majority of farmers on the continent are smallholder farmers. This generally means they do not have full knowledge of how the market systems work. They do not have information to help them with to better their farming practices, and therefore to provide them and to provide innovators with data that they can be able to build solutions that help farmers. We're currently also working with the World Food Program. They've just established a new alliance called the Food to Market Alliance, and at the center of this alliance is to be able to connect the ecosystem players in the agri space across the value chain to be able to provide information and knowledge within the ecosystem. So we look at ourselves as an integrator of the ecosystem, and this is our interest in agriculture and food self-sufficiency. I suspect we lost Deepak. This is an awkward situation. So maybe somebody else can just proceed and introduce themselves.
Sure. I guess we haven't heard from Ladipo, and
okay.
It looks like Care. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll go. So hi, my name is Ladipo Lawani. I'm the CEO of LNL Foods. So LNL Foods is a peanut processing company based out of Nigeria. We started in 2015 because we identified a huge gap in the market. And that was that in Nigeria, there wasn't a lot of value addition happening in the peanut space, even though it's sort of a large category. So Nigeria is the third largest consumer of peanuts, but we realized that over 90% of those peanuts were being consumed in used wine bottles or cellophane bags. So it was predominantly industry. We identified, so upon looking in, we realized that there was a lot of inefficiency across the value chain. So from the planting to the post-harvest management. And so as a result, there was gains in terms of cost. It was possible to improve the cost by improving the efficiency, but it was also possible to improve the income to the smallholder farmers and all the other value chain actors. And so our vision became to sort of champion the growth in that industry and offer a reliable retail brand. We've been doing this now for about 5 years. We're sold across the country in over 18,000 stores. So we sold the retail end. In the last year, we've partnered with an NGO called To Scale, which is funded by the Dutch Foreign Ministry of Affairs. And the goal is to include 4,000 farmers into our value in the next 4 years. And through that program, we're able to help improve their income by about 250% through various interventions that target efficiency. And so essentially, we've acted as a catalyst to linking that value chain and making it more efficient. And that's something, we're very passionate about.
Awesome, Ladeep. Actually, I just got out for a couple of seconds. I don't know, there were some network issues. So, Kerr, actually, you have been doing phenomenal work in ensuring that fertilizer are produced on the farms. Right? Pretty interesting concept. So, we would like to understand a little bit more from you that how you have been able to achieve that miracle.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Kåre Gunnar. I come from a company called Into Applied. But to go back a couple of years, I'm grown up at a farm. I'm a farmer's son from a dairy farm. So even though that is in Norway, as I've traveled around in Africa, also seen, though there are some differences between Norwegian farming and farming in Africa, there's also something which is quite similar. The plants need water, they need sun, they need fertilizer. And that's pretty much the basics, whether you are in Africa or in Norway. And also been a bit into with 10 years in the politics, and as well as working with an environmental NGO. So for me to endure on the N2 Applied vision has been a great challenge or possibility to walk the talk. And not just talking about change, but actually trying to make one. And for him to apply that change is how we can increase food production without using more land at the same time as we reduce emissions. And we start at the end with what everybody else sometimes doesn't like to talk about. But for some of you, we are after lunch, so we can talk about what comes out afterwards. In our case, we try to use the resources which is locally available on the farm, meaning livestock manure or livestock excreta, which we treat with 2 ingredients, which I'm sure you have plenty of in everywhere in the world. It's air, just regular air, and electricity, preferably from locally renewable produced electricity. And these are the 3 ingredients mainly, some kind of organic waste. It could be livestock excreta, it could be your own, or it could be digestate from a biogas plants or some kind of fraction, which is not possible to use for anything else. We upgrade it and turn it into a sustainable fertilizer for the plants. So that's kind of what the technology does. But for the farmer, that means that we have stopped the losses of nutrients, because when he uses this fertilizer, he doesn't have any loss of nitrogen, meaning that he can reduce or completely eliminate his need for chemical fertilizer, which is produced centralized and for some it's quite expensive. He can fertilize better. By this, after the treatment, he knows exactly how much nutrients he has. And when you fertilize, you have to do it at the right time, at the right place, and with the right amounts for the crops. So it's easier for him to do the right thing. And for the planet, it's nice when you have stopped climate emissions related to organic waste, as well as the loss of ammonia, which is more air quality, but for a farmer, every ammonia loss is a loss of money, because that meaning nitrogen going up in the air and not to the plants. So for N2 Apply, we're a company with about 30 people doing. We have done quite extensive amount of research. In Africa, we have cooperated with the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa. and done trials there for a couple of years, and also have locally trained people to run the unit down there. This is a small unit, smaller than a tractor, which is placed locally on the farm. We're doing a lot of development all over, depending on, because it sometimes might be hard for to convince a farmer in Norway or a farmer in Africa that the stuff works when we have just tested it somewhere else. So we do try to do that everywhere in where we are, and hoping to do our part in improving and upgrading the organic waste into a valuable fertilizer.
Awesome, Kurt. It was a pleasure knowing the great work you are doing, because we all need to eat more organic food, and if you have organic nutrients to take care of that, life becomes far better. Once we have gone through all the initial introduction, let me also give a little bit of brief about me. I'm Deepak Parekh. I run a company called Honeybee, which is into management consulting focused on social impact sector, trying to bring innovation and technology to that. I'm a serial entrepreneur who have created a couple of edtech companies, including Microp, DigiAgri. These companies awarded by World Economic Forum as Technology Pioneer. I work very closely with African Union, ASEAN Secretariat, various governments, and private sector companies. And here I am to learn from you, all of you, and take insight and see to it how Africa can be food self-sufficient. So I'll go back to Ashwin. Ashwin, we talk a lot about digital technology, right? Now, challenge in agriculture is that even the physical infrastructure is very, very critical, from typically cold storages to the dry storages, roads, infrastructure, because more than 35% of the food produced in Africa is actually lost. If we are able to just save that, we'll be able to feed far more people. Second challenge is that if you see post-COVID, a lot of value chain has broken, and from 135 million odd people who are food insecure globally, we are at a level of 270 million people, and a substantial part of them from Africa. How do you see that gap between going digital and then not having physical infrastructure, right? And are you doing something related to that in your ecosystem to also support those type of organizations, those type of institutions, those type of entrepreneurs who are not digital but actually trying to focus on the physical part of the problem as well? Floor is yours, Ashwin.
And I think that's a super relevant question. Like, we just went on a road trip across the country as well for MESS as well, and we realized that there's a few roads which are shown on Google Maps don't exist. A few of the roads which say it'll take 30 minutes actually end up taking 6 hours. So you can just imagine that there is also a lack of inconsistency of data also present, right? So I think where you're coming from is actually very true. And I think that's also the way how I think the agricultural value chain is approached also in Ghana, and specifically on this continent. Is I think when we think traditionally agriculture, we think purely about production and harvesting, but that's not the case here. Like, I think in specifically in South Africa especially, but also in Ghana and Nigeria, and we've noticed this like mostly across like most sub-Saharan African, sub-Saharan African countries, is a farmer believes that only when the produce actually goes to market is his job well done. Right? They actually don't rest. They don't trust basically aggregation services. They don't trust crowd collection services as well to actually make sure, because again, the middleman effect here is quite high. But that's how they've been existing for a long time, and that's why there's also a lack of physical infrastructure, is because middlemen come in, charge exorbitant rates to actually pull the crop out of basically the locality, and thereby also then don't focus on infrastructure. Right? I think one of the critical things we've realized is, as much as there is, I think, yes, there is digital services and there's also a need for infrastructure, there is also a layer of digital services there as well. Like, for example, if you look at a few projects, and especially one of the companies we're trying to invest in right now, which is called Boxcon. Boxcon is actually a connection of logistics centers across Ghana, right? So right now what has happened is we've found the agriculture value chain, we have a digital solution on top of it. Then on that value chain itself, we create another digital solution, right, which connects basically aggregators of storage. Then sooner than later, we see multiple different things coming into place. Because at the end of the day, what we've also realized is, yes, physical infrastructure is important, but it's also a big bottleneck. So what can we do, which is a fraction of the investment we'll be actually putting in to invest in a road, right? If actually you're investing in a startup, like for example, if you're building a road across 100 kilometers, it's going to cost you X amount of money. But if you invest 100K in a logistics startup, they'll figure out how to actually pass that road up and down, and actually will guarantee that. So I think that is where we're hedging from. But I think where you're exactly right is, yes, I think physical infrastructure is a problem. Yes, physical infrastructure is a bottleneck. There are multiple ways to solve it. And I can comfortably say this, especially about Ghana, is I think the government here is doing a lot to actually support the local value chain here as well.
Awesome, Ashwin. In fact, I love your country. I've visited Ghana many times, and I always love the the innovation of the people, and the motivation to be better in their lives. So that's infectious. Another thing, like Google Maps. In fact, I was in Madagascar at a convention center speaking at African Union's event, and I had an invitation to meet the president at the palace. And the Google Map showed me, I think, 45 odd minutes, and my flight was after 4 hours. So I said, okay, and the airport is pretty close to the convention center. I'll take a risk. And you'll be surprised, 2.5 hours, I just reached Palace. I messaged saying, sorry, sir, I have to catch my flight, go back. So yes, sometimes digital challenges are there in Africa. Continuing on the value chain, Latipo, you have been into value chain. What challenges you see, and how they can be solved to ensure that actually there is minimal food waste, and actually we are able to make this whole thing more efficient in Africa?
Yeah, thank you. So I think the most important thing for me of value chain is linkages, because if with the next step of the value chain, then especially for the people further down, the process isn't complete. So in our case, we started out as a processor, and quickly enough, we started to appreciate the problems with the quality of the raw material, but we also started to appreciate challenges around, post-harvest management. So whether that was, storage or moisture control or pest control. So we realized that for every actor, there's obviously that internet, and being able to sort of figure out the bottlenecks in the value chain is critical. So I'll use peanuts, for instance, in Nigeria. Nigeria does 3 million tons of peanuts, right? Which is over at least $2 billion of peanuts, but we're not able to export even 10% of that because of aflatoxin, right? Aflatoxin is happening at the farm level and at the post-harvest level. So you would have to sort of go fix that at a farm level. But then, as you know, in Africa, majority of farmers are smallholder farmers. So you're looking at almost 3 million farmers. So there's a few barriers there. There's obviously the education, there's the aggregation of these farmers, right? So on one level, there's the sort of fragmented nature of these value chains. But then there's obviously the infrastructure challenges that each actor is facing. So if you talk to the, say, farmer, a lot of them are using crude implements. They don't dryers or graders. I feel, in terms of tackling these, we found out that there needs to be a concerted effort. It's hard for an individual actor to fix it. So if, for instance, as a professor, hey, I've raised $10 million, I'm going to do great things in the peanut space, I still have to think of those 3 million farmers and how do I aggregate them? How do I disseminate whatever solution I have? So we found that there's sort of the ecosystem coordinators, right? And when you have those ecosystem coordinators, some of the things required is more ecosystem type solutions. So whether it's building of roads or building of critical infrastructure. So what we are doing now is we're able to partner with a few NGOs, right? And government agencies, so like the Dutch Foreign Ministry of Affairs and To Scale and IFBC. And having those sort of public sector partners is critical, because now we can find sort of grant money or patient capital to tackle issues that aren't really our direct problem. For instance, things like how you tackle aflatoxin at the farm level, you need aflatoxin at farm level, you need aflatoxin. So how do you get farmers over that initial hurdle? So essentially, I think the summary of what I'm saying is coordination at the central level, and it's not always a private sector partner. There needs to be sort of collaboration between private and public sector, because some of that work isn't really adhering to the private sector partner. And so the incentive to do that and the funds to do that are not available. And so you have between public and private sector, we sort of seen progress. And in the last 5 years, we've seen growth because of those type of partnerships.
Perfect. Roland, I would like to pull you in for this. Like, you're also running ecosystem for with intention of taking projects which are for public good. And here, and then you leverage innovation and technology as well. What are your views in trying to mend the fragile value chain in Africa, especially for food commodities, which is actually can ensure better security for food security for people of Africa. So are you doing something on those lines in this area?
And just Ladipo has just, there's need for transparency in the market. Obviously, there's no perfect knowledge, so all the players have their interests that they would like to pursue in the market space, and therefore the issue of trust, which again I think Ashwin mentioned, it becomes extremely critical. For us to be able to build that trust, we need to be able to build platforms that allow these partnerships to happen in transparency, for us to be able to increase the level of knowledge that is happening in the market. And one of the things that we work on very well is collaboration with public sector being a driver of convening all the players within the value chain. So I think there is an opportunity, and now going into tech, on leveraging technology. If you look at the financial sector, for example, today that space is more transparent precisely because data is made available. Data is made available to all players within the sector, which is yet not happening within the agri space. So creating open data platforms that allows for all players to be able to access transparent data for, building the capacity of particularly smallholder farmers to have visibility of all the information and components that lead to a transparent market system. So we are investing significantly in that. I think I had already mentioned earlier, one of the projects we are working on now is with the World Food Program. They've just set up a new alliance they're calling Food to Market Alliance, FTMA, which is bringing in a lot of players from the financial sector, from input players, from manufacturing, that allows all these players in the market to support smallholder farmers. We still have to push the envelope quite a bit for people to have trust amongst each other. Because again, like people mentioned this, majority of the players in the agri space, of course, are private sector. They have commercial interests. Commercial interests largely make people have self-interest first before communal interest. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think the opportunity for us is to build the infrastructure somebody mentioned on open data to allow transparency in the market space.
Perfect. Very well articulated. No, I fully agree that maybe from pushing envelope, we'll have to start make farmer pushing credit cards. So that brings me to Wadzi. So Wadzi, we would like to understand, we talked about the value chain. Value chain are fragile for one of the reasons is that actually lack of trust. And we have been hearing a lot about blockchain and those type of technologies, which are typically fintech, but we are very critical to ensure the cost of transaction in agriculture goes down. That will definitely augment the capability of value chain. We would like to understand from you that, MasterCard or MasterCard Foundation, are they thinking on doing something which would make agritech and fintech get married and hence create a better solution for our farmers, making them more financially capable?
Thanks so much. I mean, it's a brilliant question. And I think when you look at the diffusion of innovation within the tech space, much of what's emerging across multiple sectors that are not within financial services is built on the advent of fintech. So the minute from a digital product design, we were able to digitize payments, a number of other services could then be built on top of existing payments platforms. And I think a really interesting emerging space on the continent is really looking at, well, the Africanized version of what is open banking in Europe, which is alternative forms of data built on or augmenting payments. So the fact that when you look at, say, an ecosystem like Kenya, where M-Pesa was the early fintech actor in the ecosystem that then birthed so many other financial and other services products. I think when you look at things like the agricultural space, whether it's retail, e-commerce, all of these are made possible because individuals are able to transact within the digital space, and people have access to mobile phones and digital payments and that kind of thing. So I think what I would say in response to that question is it's actually happening already. But obviously the biggest challenge that we face is around last mile distribution. That's probably more than, when you work within the sort of the digital product design space, we have an adage that if you build it, they will come, is not at all something that is a viable option within the tech space. Are we capable of solving for the majority of the agricultural sector issues that we have with technology? Yes. But in the end, a number of issues do have to be tackled. One of the big ones being just around access to connectivity, access to devices. And so from a foundation standpoint, when we start to think about all of the ways in which we can really harness the capabilities of digital technology to have an impact within the agriculture and other sectors, is looking at it from a system-wide initiative. And so we are busy working with a number of partners to create financial services products that are pay-as-you-go, that will allow access to digital devices for farmers, access to digital devices for e-commerce retailers and actors within that space. The second thing is doing a lot of work around working with policy actors to either zero rate or to start looking at the ways in which we can enable connectivity. Also working with alternative connectivity providers. So not just, obviously, you look at a place like Kenya, the arrival of a number of undersea cables meant that connectivity costs would reduce drastically over the last few years. But then there are also, I know Google Loon is very active within East Africa in terms of creating alternative forms of connectivity. So there are the larger order issues, which are devices and connectivity. But when you look at private sector actors and innovators, especially digital technology providers, I would say what we're working at as a foundation is partnering with entities on a system-wide aspect. I think one of my favorite entities, and Ashwin, you'll probably know them, I think you worked with KICC within the Ghana space. And what was particularly exciting about some of the work that they do is when they see digital services within the ecosystem, they look at the entire aspect of the value chain. They look at the user journey from early sort of seeding all the way through harvest and post-harvest and look at market constraints. And you can see that the emerging technology companies that have gone through their system touch on different pockets of the supply chain. I know I've given a really long answer to your question, but the nutshell of it would be fintech came first, and digital payments have actually now unlocked the capabilities that are able to be built onto payment platforms as a precursor that are really creating exciting products and services. And the final frontier is going to really be about last mile access in order to allow for universal access.
No, pretty true, actually. Like, last mile access is a critical challenge. While you are seeing from Google to Facebook, everybody's trying to put undersea cable to get more and more Africans, contribute to their data pool, right? But at the same time, the reduction in the cost of 4G and 5G technologies and their enhanced capabilities, I believe, soon you'll find that more and more African would be having the last mile access to the broadband. Now, I would like to take the question to Ali. We have understood the challenges, and we understand that Norway is a country full of innovation, right? Smart companies. Do you see that actually, Norwegian companies trying to solve the problem of value chain and supply chain of agriculture commodities in Africa? If you can share some example, if you have.
Yes, I'm happy to. As you you mentioned so many of the challenges that also touched upon in my introduction. One being the be able to track or the products to reduce post-harvest loss, to track actually from the farm to the fork. So one company would be Farm Force, which is trying to solve exactly that challenge. Giving a platform of trust the whole way. Then you mentioned storage challenge. Most need some kind of cold chain, and there are sensors available for that, both tracking humidity as well as the temperature, giving you alerts on your mobile whenever something wrong is happening that could affect the crop in storage. Connectivity. There is another Norwegian company, Find My, which is using a tracking device for grazing animals. It's actually used both on elephants, lion, as well as sheep and reindeers, and it's not being applied everywhere. Not everywhere, but a lot of places already, and using satellite tracking instead of the mobile signal, because like in Norway we have so many areas where it's not covered by phone signals, so that's another solution to that. And I don't think we talked much about irrigation, but like in East Africa 95% of the farms are rain fed, and that causes problem with flooding and the lack of irrigation. And there are solutions of smart irrigation using very little water and rather taking the challenge away from the flooding and using it for precision watering of the crops. And I think a lot of the challenges that have been mentioned is also linked to having access to energy. Vansi, you mentioned it, and Kåre, you mentioned it as well. So I also think that when we look at the whole value chain and the things we can do to actually improve both the yield as well as reducing post-harvest loss, we have to look at access to renewable energy. And there again, there are so many good solutions out there that just, I think we need to apply it. Both to get the local produced fertilizer as well as having the mobile charged so they can get onto your platform, let's see, as well as having monitoring of the cold chain. Yeah, we need access to energy as well. And I think that's that those two sectors, agri and renewable, are very much interlinked when we're talking about the solution going forward. And Deepak, like you said introductionally, we have to collaborate a lot of different partners to solve these challenges that are on our table. But I think we have the solution, so it's about scaling and applying them. A lot of the time, that's the challenge we're facing, I think.
Surely, I fully agree that in agri-tech, the scaling becomes one of the biggest challenge, because you have farmers with different mindset, different demography, different activities, different level of understanding and skills. So yes, scaling always is a challenge in agriculture, and I believe the technologies which companies from Norway are having can definitely be used in Africa to make Africa food secure. Kåre, I would like to understand from you, just continuing on the value chain, creating fertilizer on the field is awesome. How do you see that the agri input value chain, that is also another challenge, and there is another challenge of low productivity in Africa. You'll find that there is not a single crop in which Africa or countries in Africa is having the productivity even equivalent to the global average. So how do you solve those challenges, and do you see that nutrients are one of the culprits there, or lack of use of nutrient a culprit there?
Hopefully we can eliminate one of the imports in terms of fertilizer by by making it locally instead of either import or making it in large scale factories with our units. But it's also a bit I think you have one, of course, technology is like us, where the farmer he can just use the fertilizer he has and get more yield out of it. That's great. That works well, and it might fit into the daily operation on the farm. But it's also, I think there is and there will always be in agronomy need for knowledge about when to do the things. And just to take fertilizer, since I'm that's kind of my thing. I can if you spread your fertilizer on the field, the plants will hopefully get some of it, but depending on the weather conditions, you might lose between 20 and 90% of the nitrogen. If you lose 90% of the nitrogen, it's not very much left for the plants. And just to kind of to get down to spread when the weather conditions are better, there's just one simple way of reducing the emissions, which you can do actually without technology, just by focusing on how to do it in the right timing. When I visited a farmer in Kenya, I was amazed about seeing how the farmers got together weekly to test and to see different kind of agronomic practices. This is not ag tech. This is just simple agronomy. But oh my God, simple agronomy can be so advanced. And they tested and learned, and I would say that what they did was actually more advanced than using a large special machinery to spread fertilizer. But they were testing, looking at the results, and that was maybe one of the best evidence that it worked. And I think that's so you can get much more out of the resources you have. And for me, it's kind of I wouldn't say an ideology, but I do believe there is so many possibilities in getting more out of what is locally available if you look at it from the right perspective. You have a lot of the resources available if you just can use it better. Like slaughtery waste can be turned into valuable feed for fish, or for growing different kind of or for making proteins as animal feed. There's so many possibilities in trying to utilize what you have, but you need the knowledge about it, and you need someone who can really challenge the way you do it today, and see the whole perspective and not only one goal into it.
Perfect, Corel. Very, very insightful. Now, as we are having another 6 minutes, I know there is no silver bullet to solve this such a big problem, but still, I would request all of you, if you can share 2 silver bullet, what should be done to make Africa food self-sufficient using technology. Maybe start with Ellie, if you can tell 2 things what needs to be done. Except getting companies from Norway, definitely will do that.
Of course. No, but that's impossible. If I had the answer to that, I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would be, I don't know, king of the hill somewhere, No, but it's like a boring answer. I think we just have to keep on, talking about it, working together, exchanging ideas, never giving up, and sharing experience, contacts, results, negative, positive, transparency, openness, and inclusion. So that would be, I don't know how many that was, Deepak, but
you got 4, so that's it's a good start. Vadzi, from you, silver bullets?
I mean, I think I will speak from the standpoint of the role that philanthropic capital can have in this space. And I would say 2 things. The first is really making nutrition-focused investments and integrating actually smart nutrition principles as and impact measurements within our programming. I think about the investments that we're making. We're predominantly looking at human capital development and youth livelihoods. But like from birth onwards, so the first thousand days that a child is alive, if you're not taking care of their nutrition, all of the interventions that you kind of focus on by the time they're in high school or university, where most of the investment is focused, you've missed out on an opportunity around brain development that's really critical for human capital development. And then the second standpoint, I would say, is some of what we're trying to do, which is really, there's such a dearth of the venture capital that's available for technology companies on the continent that are doing really good work. And, you know, a really plug for a couple of really great books that have come out that are really focused on the unattainability of an African Silicon Valley and some of the major challenges. And I would say the big challenge is a lot of the global capital goes towards tech companies that have founders from the global north. And so some of what we're trying to do is look at appropriate ticket sizes for investment, whether it's grant or VC, and crowding around us, and great initiatives, appropriately sized funding for African ventures. There are great tech companies on the continent, and it's worthwhile investing in them, both financially as well as in terms of their capacity to build their own ventures.
Perfect. Creating local capabilities, funding more local companies, and creating ecosystem. Awesome, Ajay. You nailed it well. And definitely, I might be sending few companies for you to write check for. That brings me to Ashwin. Ashwin, your views, again, some silver bullets. What should be done?
Yeah, trying to keep it very minimal, and I think trying to keep it very crisp. I think the first one is entrepreneurship is the way to go in the ag value chain on the continent. We need more people supporting it. We need more people engaging in it. Yes, I think lots of farms have legacy owners, but that doesn't mean that new people cannot enter this. And I think the more people enter it, the better our food security, the better the world actually exists. The second thing is also very critical is there's a lack of data regarding agriculture on the continent. The key thing is to often, I think, share, collaborate, as well as be hopefully points of data sources, which also can be, which can come out. I think there's a lack of open data, especially around agriculture, infrastructure, and even development, venture capital in Africa, I think, which ties into what Wadzi was saying. So let's try to look for more data sources, try to make more data-driven decisions, and hopefully then technology can be the future.
In fact, Ashwin, if you do have some time tomorrow at, I think, 1:30 CET, there is a session on digital agriculture where we are having people, including Andre, who is head of GODAN, which is actually global repository of agriculture data and open data. And we are having actually discussion all centered around data-driven agriculture. So, and if you have time, from blockchain to machine learning to everything which need data, we'll be talking about that. So I would like to invite you for that. Ladipo, what's your view of what bullets would you shoot to get us all self-sufficient as far as food is concerned?
Before I say that, first of all, I think there's a question of urgency, right? Food security in Africa is an urgent issue. If you sort of social upheaval happening is tied to the current insecurity of food. And so if we're talking about silver bullets, I think my priority would be on scalability, speed, and scale. And when you look at speed and scale, I think, like Ashwin said, entrepreneurship is the way to go. But I think generally the focus has been on small, which I think is noble in terms of poverty and equality. But I think we can do more with SMEs or medium-sized companies that have the potential to scale very quickly. So these are businesses that have oftentimes proven that they can, get to a certain point commercially, and see how these private sector actors can drive some of these sort of changes, whether it's building infrastructure, do they get to finance into infrastructure, manage it under a PPP agreement, and then sort of transfer that. But ultimately, solutions need to happen quick, and I think private sector can play a critical role.
I'm so sorry, we have just run out of time. We are having last 30 seconds. So that I would like to use for thanking all of you. You have been very insightful, and let's all work together to make Africa food self-sufficient. And all the stakeholders need to pull their socks and say, Africa is future. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. Wonderful moderation. Thank you, everyone, for very good interventions.
Everyone.
Thank you.